Welcome to the DNX podcast, the number one resource for entrepreneurs, nomads, and impact-driven souls. And I am your coach, Silvia Christman. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here today with Niraj Naik. He is the renegade pharmacist, and he's also a fellow friend from the Kopangang community. And I'm so excited that you made the time to be here today.
Yes, super duper excited.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. Now I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm really interested in sharing all of your wisdom with our audiences. So you are the renegade pharmacist. That is what you started. You used to be a pharmacist, and then you went into the holistic health sector. And now you also started something very new, which is Soma. But why don't you start us off by talking about how you went to become the renegade pharmacist?
Okay, well, it's quite a story, so I'll try and make it as concise and entertaining as possible. But basically, I actually was a community pharmacist many years ago, and that's my big taste of my own medicine, because I got to see how corrupt the healthcare industry is from within. And I actually went on a bit of a mission to try and change that system. And I created this healthy shopping list service to change people's diets, because that was one of the big problems I noticed, was that people are on loads of medications for things which could be fixed by diet. And that got me fired from my first job. I got called a renegade. But then that led me to being promoted to the head office of one of the biggest supermarket chains in the UK, to come out with this healthy shopping list service, which would have really helped a lot of people. But then again, I got called the renegade again for being too controversial with things I was saying. So back in 2010, we were still on the cusp of really understanding things like sugar being bad for your health and processed foods and all that. And I was saying quite controversial stuff in my information, saying, don't drink cans of Coke, which I mean, everyone knows that it's not healthy, but, I was telling people who are diabetics to stop eating so much sugar and getting people off processed junk food and onto real foods, which is like really simple things, right? But back then it was amazing how controversial that seemed. That then meant that project got shelved, and I just got so disillusioned with the whole system. I was just so depressed. And I got hit with a lightning bolt, and I got a stress-induced autoimmune condition called ulcerative colitis. And I was literally housebound for a whole year. And I kind of surrendered to the healthcare system, because I just gave up on life, to be honest. I didn't care if I lived or died for a while. And imagine you're going to the toilet 40 times a day, bleeding.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. So anyway, they say God, there's an acronym for God, which is gift of desperation. And God tends to come to you in your most desperate moments. And literally I was praying on the toilet one day, I remember it very well, for some way out of this, because I was young and I was like, there's got to be a way out. This is just horrible. And the doctor told me, there's no relationship to stress. Diet doesn't make any difference. Just shut up and take the pills, basically. So I was very, very left on my own. And then a third path came, because I was told either you have your colon removed or go on meds. But a third path came, and that's now a very close friend of our family, Silvia, who's a yoga teacher in the UK. And she said to me, you've got a gift, because if you can heal yourself, you will be a great role model to other people. And she taught me the fundamentals of yoga, pranayama, meditation, ayurveda. And I just followed what I learned. And it also made me, when I started seeing a little bit of results, made me obsessed with these ancient techniques. So I just went on a quest to learn as much of this stuff as possible, and to find the science to back up the reasons why I was getting better. And literally within a few months, I was back to normal, full health. And I got really back into music. So music was a big passion of mine. And I always was a music producer. Before I even became a pharmacist, I was running these big raves in the UK. That's what I always thought I was going to do. But I ended up actually becoming a legal drug dealer at the age of like 24, when that whole event business fell apart. So I ended up like seeing the world from two different angles, like seeing it from a from an entrepreneurial perspective, running this kind of hippie rave type stuff on a big scale, and then also seeing the corporate world on a very huge scale, and the way the masses are brainwashed into buying stuff they don't really need. And then I got the whole taste of my own medicine as a pharmacist, and having to heal myself from the chronic illness, and seeing how these medications don't really get to the root cause, the problems, and how it's a huge industry and people are literally customers for life for things that can be fixed by lifestyle changes, and really understanding how the environment influences health. So I literally went on a quest after that and went back into music and created therapy music for therapists, because I found hypnotherapy was very powerful, guided meditation and breath work and breathing techniques. So I ended up like people like Marissa Peer, who's quite a famous therapist now. She used all my music in her hypnosis tracks. Wim Hof, I produced the entire soundtrack to the Wim Hof method. Shashi, who we both know, all of her tantra stuff, I did the music.
Yeah, Marissa Peers was already a podcast guest of ours as well.
Oh, so beautiful!
That's really cool. Yeah. I know her. Yeah, she's great.
She's like my second mum. Yeah.
Oh, she's so lovely.
We're very close.
Yeah.
Very, very close. Yeah. So I've been on this crazy journey, and I literally knew that a big part of my illness was being stuck in a soul destroying career. So one of the things, and another thing we have in common, is this: I had to become location independent. I'm a creative person who can't be put in a box in a cubicle. And one of my favorite movies is Office Space, because it's just so funny, and it's really tells the true story of how bad it can get if you work in a cubicle for too long, and how depressed you can get. So I was literally really like just the worst person to be around for several years, because I was just so negative and just so stressed out. And anyway, so becoming location independent and going and living in Koh Phangan on a tropical island was like one of my big ambitions. And then I just became a super hippie, and literally I was like living on the beach, I literally didn't work. I'd say I didn't do any I had such an automated business doing the therapy music, and I had some stuff on Amazon selling supplements, and it was so automated. I literally had like a 4-minute work week. I read the book 4-Hour Work Week, and I was like, this is the dream. This is what I got to do. But then it was like the 4-minute work week. I had so much time. I was like, I'm going to be the ultimate hippie. So I just did everything you could possibly do. Tantra, like yoga, meditation. I just went into all of these things. Mm-hmm. And I found that there's so much like noise out there. There's so much different ways of doing everything. And actually one of the things that really kind of got me, grabbed my attention was, firstly, like seeing how it helped my health was the breathwork, breathing techniques, pranayama, and tantra, and going into tantra and how you can move energy, and seeing people go into these super heightened states of consciousness just through the breath and moving energy and connection, and things, just simple things like eye gazing, how it can move energy. I just got fascinated by this idea of changing physiology and physiological states without substances, because I came from a very druggy background, being a DJ and running these raves, and I knew that was a big part of the problem as well, because it just affected my lifestyle and my health, and just like stimulant drugs can really mess you up. So I was really like just loving the vibe of Koh Phangan, where people are just getting as high without taking anything, just drinking kombucha and drinking cacao. And this was just like amazing. I just found my home, right, my little bubble. But then what happened was, then I met like Wim Hof. Wim Hof's a good friend of mine, and he had put some good science to these breathing techniques. And I ended up like spending a lot of time with him. We produced like music together. I created the soundtrack to the Wim Hof method and stuff like that. And I run a few events with him. And I'd always had my own breathwork practice, which was around rhythmic breathing and breath retention. And it was a more gentler way of doing it. And I was just like really intrigued to find more scientific evidence other than what Wim Hof had done. And it took me back into my roots. And I went to Rishikesh and I spent some time with a doctor who has done amazing studies with techniques like kumbhaka, breath retention, for altering physiology and moving stem cells around the body, and amazing stuff that explains the phenomenon of superhuman yogis and why they're able to do such miraculous things with their bodies and stuff. And so then what happened was I then combined a lot of this stuff. At first, it's just started off me doing little workshops on the beach with these ancient breathing techniques with rhythmic music, and getting people into these kind of heightened states of consciousness, and using it as a tool as well to set goals and manifest as well. Like, I don't want to make it like a woo-woo thing, but you can actually like make stuff happen in reality if you put your absolute intention on it and in heightened states of consciousness. I really believe that, because it's just happened to me so many times. And so it started off with just a few people on the beach. Then it turned into actual workshops in Copenhagen. Then it turned into a big conscious music festival. And then I was like, wow, when I had 200 people doing all these breathing techniques. And they even had this film crew came who did a documentary from the UK. And they filmed me doing a workshop with a famous celebrity partaking. And he was just loving it. He gave me such a good testimonial. I was like, right, I have to take this to the rest of the world. I can't just keep this in the beach, in Copenhagen. I've got to bring this. So that's when I started to take it to Europe, and I went on tour, and firstly it started like I did some stuff with Mind Valley, and I ended up like on stage at one of their big events, and started off with doing little workshops at A-Fest, and that turned into like the thing that everyone talks about, A-Fest, and then I ended up like moving over here in Spain, and we built an amazing little community. I've now got over 100 instructors doing this Soma technique, and it's just grown into a big movement. And I'm actually in a week's time going to America to have a meeting, very important meeting. I'm not going to jinx it by revealing too much, but it could take this way of meditating to a much bigger level, which could help so many people, because this form of meditation, which involves breath work and music, it makes it more fun to do. And a lot of people have these misconceptions about meditation taking hours and hours and hours. I know your own little practice, you're telling me just takes 20 minutes. Yeah, it doesn't take long, but I think some people get bored and they need some kind of guide. And so the way I've created it is it just makes it fun. But what it does is it also hits on some key points, and that is that with breath control, which is pranayama, energy control, you can actually make the processes in your body, the metabolic processes of your mitochondria, which is the energy parts of your cells, much more efficient. And actually mitochondrial function is a big subject right now, because it's linked to so many things like degenerative disease, brain fog, and lack of cognitive abilities, and low energy and chronic fatigue. All of these things are linked to malfunctioning mitochondria, or just inefficient mitochondria. And oxygen, actually, too much oxygen in the body through over breathing or not breathing the right way, not in the right rhythm, actually leads to oxidative stress. And it's why we need antioxidants. So actually this technique, what it does is it makes you really efficient at using oxygen. It means you need less, and it means you breathe less during the day. You generally become more calm if you need to breathe less, become more focused, more centered. And it has this dramatic effect of vasodilation. You dilate blood vessels, you get better blood flow to the brain, better blood flow to the heart. So it can actually open up parts of the brain that haven't been even used that much before, exercise. So you can become more creative, you can have more focus, you can sleep better at night. Sleep is a very important thing. And all of these things are really important to becoming efficient and happy and healthy. So I just believe I've created like a fun way to meditate, but get all the benefits of breathing and breath work the right way. And with music, so the music is fun as well, and it just makes the whole process more exciting. So anyone can do it. There's no excuse not to do it. It's just something you gotta have a go and try.
Yeah, I mean, I want to try it. I'm a huge fan of breath work, and it looks so interesting to me that I'm I really want to try it. I hope that I get to see you somewhere over the next few months. I think we might be crossing paths somewhere, either in Mexico, maybe in the US, perhaps in Costa
Yeah,
Rica. We never know, but
definitely.
I would love to try it because to me, and for me on my journey, breath work, music, sound, and dancing changed everything. It changed all the things that
Really
conventional medicine, therapy, NLP, and all the other stuff could not even touch. And it deeply,
beautiful.
deeply changed everything
Because
I am.
you got touch with the soma. The soma is the
Yeah.
body. In Greek, soma means body. And one body, one mind, one consciousness. Your body is your mind. Your inner world becomes your outer world. So when
Mm.
you move, you just actually are moving your mind. And when you get your energy in motion, your emotion, that's when, and you get in control of it, then boom, you flow in life. And that I can see, that's what you've done. You know, you've got
Yeah.
tapped into your body.
Yeah.
And
And,
the
and,
thing
and
that, yeah.
especially for people like me who, had dealt with trauma, the trauma creates a split between body, mind, and
Mm,
soul. And conventional
yes.
methodologies or positive psychology or anything that operates on the mind had absolutely zero effects at all.
Yes.
That was never going to get me out of the deep states of anxiety and depression that I lived in. And
Mm,
that connection that I created with what you call the soma really
mm.
brought me back to life, and that was probably like 8, 9 years ago.
Amazing.
And so, yeah, I'm a huge supporter. I don't know your specific methodology, but I do want to try it.
Yeah. Well, it's just basically a sequence of pranayama techniques. So if you
Yeah.
do yoga and you understand pranayama, the roots. Well, actually, it's so if we go to the origins of yoga, where it came from, it comes from this psychedelic legend of Soma. So the Rig Veda is like the world's most oldest religious manuscript. And
Mm-hmm.
in there, there's 50,000 references to this plant ritual called Soma, where the rishis and shamans would like take this psychedelic concoction. It's probably mushrooms or something similar, and they would have these like awakening experiences. And this actually became the method of divining the knowledge that helped form the world's first civilizations. However, they all got hooked on the soma, on the plant, and the god Indra ordered everyone to discover the soma within and how to create the soma within. And that's the origin of Tantra. Tantra was so what happened, these Soma, they were called the Soma cults or tribes. They would then use breath as the technique, as the cornerstone foundation of Tantra, which is where yoga kind of comes from and all these things around the same time, was the pursuit to create the Soma within by connecting to the breath. Because the breath is the one thing you have control over consciously and on autopilot, unconsciously. So with that, it means that you can control your autonomic nervous system. So pranayama is just a system of techniques for controlling your autonomic nervous system, which means you can wake up your inner pharmacy and make your own medicines. And one of those is DMT, because you can create endogenous DMT with the right breathing techniques. So Soma, what I've revived is this ancient technique of breathwork with music and getting into trance states. And with progressive practice, you can actually hold your breath longer and longer to the point where you can hold it for so long that you trigger the release of endogenous DMT, and you have this like ecstatic, like inner peace,
Mm.
bliss, awakening, whilst in this very deep meditative state.
Mm.
So yeah.
You know what's so interesting, and I'm going to ask you this because I know that this is a huge trend happening in the world around us right now, where plant medicine is being sought out and used as a vehicle to reach those set of stages. And what I
Yes.
find interesting is that I practiced a lot of these practices prior to this becoming, the shortcut to reaching these states. And I've just not seen the need personally. And this
Good.
is a very personal experience because I have gone to these stages through pranayama and breathing techniques. So what you just described is like connecting with the soma. and releasing. And I've had the trippiest experiences, like trippy. You know, I would say there were definitely 2 years of my life where I was a little too far off with the fairies, but it wasn't because I was taking any substances, because I was so deeply tapped into my inner pharmacy and all kinds of psychedelic experiences you can trigger through that. So, you know, without touching any substances whatsoever, do you have any thoughts on the popularity of, you know, plant medicine, frog medicine, all kinds of medicine being used to create experiences?
I think there's a few different sides to it. There's the side where it's like a cool thing to do, like recreational thing, and it becomes like a trend where there's money to be made. So people jump into it who are opportunity seekers. There's definitely a huge a resurgence of that happening, where you've got ex-cocaine dealers now becoming pseudo shamans. And that's definitely one of the big problems that we've got, you know, going on, is crossover between cocaine, drug dealer, mafia, and shamanism, which is obviously, I detest that stuff. But then also, like, I've met some authentic shamans, Peruvian origin, and they told me actually that the shaman would never give it to anyone, like just anyone. Like, you wouldn't be able to queue up. That happened. This is like a new thing that's happened. Maybe they need more money there or something. There's like, the economy's bad, but basically the shaman would be the one who take the ayahuasca. They would have the ecstatic experience, and through that they would know what's wrong with the person, and they'd be able to treat that person in a more telepathic way almost. And it wasn't like you'd give it to somebody else for them to take and then them have this big awakening. I've done ayahuasca before, and I would never recommend anyone does it, because it's so profound, right? The change that happens. I had such a deep experience. I have no calling to do it again. I had a completely positive one. It's not like I was rolling around with like demons coming out of me or anything. It was actually completely opposite. It's angelic, like awakening. But it doesn't mean that I would push it on anyone, because it's just, we're entering into realms which not everyone understands. And, you know, even I think a lot of the modern day shamans, even if they're from Peru, they don't even fully understand it, because it's lost in tradition. And like, there is obviously now like people using like studies going, like maps, and people looking at psilocybin as a treatment for depression. I like that. I think that's cool. Like, if it's done in a safe way, it could be a good thing for therapy. Like, they're showing some really promising results for things like depression and things like that, like up to 80% like kind of success rates. And I think sometimes you need a little bit of a kickstart. Like, mushrooms can give people the sudden kickstart, but it should not be the thing that you're stuck on and hooked on, because this is the big problem. I know people have done ayahuasca like 40 times and they're still just as screwed up as they were before they did it. And I'm like, why you're just taking one addiction and move it on to another one. And this time you're entering into realms where you don't even understand. Yeah. So it's like, you know, like, I am really into breathwork and these techniques, because it's the origin story of where they came from was to get the dependency off substances. Mm-hmm. And that's what the yogis kind of came to the conclusion of, is that, like, look, we can't just be hooked on substances for our bliss, because what if it runs out? Right. And that's the problem we have right now, is that, like, you know, we have now the somas are in different forms, prescription meds, antidepressants, you know, antipsychotics. They're just like sweets, handed out like sweets. You know, I think almost every single person in America is on some kind of medication, right? In England, it's pretty bad as well. So we have all these other forms of soma. It may not just be psychedelics, but there's drugs in general. You know, altering your chemistry through chemicals. Chemicals aren't intelligent, okay? They don't know anything about your soul or who you are. Like, maybe sacred plant medicines, they have their own innate sentience or something, but like chemicals such as drugs made by pharmaceuticals, they have zero connection to your soul, and they will mess with you on a scientific reductionist perspective, which means that you're altering chemistry of your body to meet an average baseline, that standard which the government have set, which is completely wrong, because what's considered high blood pressure for you may completely be low blood pressure for me. Your high cholesterol levels may be low cholesterol for me. You know, there is no average when it comes to the human body. We're all individuals, and that's why I love Ayurveda, because it's all about, there's no one size fits all. It's all about understanding that we're all different, we're all individual, and we all have certain characteristics that make up our energy types, and that's, you prescribe things in Ayurveda based on your energy types, which is a lot more, in my opinion, evolved than this scientific reductionist medical system we have today, which is ultimately designed to make shit ton of money for drug companies.
Yeah.
So I'm very much not a big fan of pushing plant ceremonies on everyone. Like, it's something that calls you when you're ready, and it really needs to be done in a safe space. It can re-traumatize you as well. You have to be careful that, actually, I know, because in Copenhagen there's so many of these pseudo shams who come there and stuff. You've probably heard of it, and it can re-traumatize you.
All.
Yeah, you see it, especially living on that side of the island. So, yeah,
especially on that side of the island.
Yeah, definitely. It's the beach. The movie The Beach.
It is the beach. It is literally. It is the beach.
It's literally based on that. I think the movie's based on that.
It is.
So that's my 2 cents worth, and that's why I think Soma is so important right now, and why I feel like I'm in a good place being a pharmacist. I can tell both sides of the story. I've done every single psychedelic under the sun, so I know what it's like, but it's not something that I recommend people get addicted to. Yeah.
I agree. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. This was an incredible episode. We're going to post links to your website and your programs below this podcast, so people can find you and can find your workshops and upcoming events and your festival. So thank you for being here. We really, really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay.
Fantastic, Silvia. Been my pleasure.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your ongoing support. Before I leave you, I want to invite you into my world. Please go check out dnxcommunity.com. This is where you'll find the other nomads and evaders of convention. We'll see you there. And if you're interested in our English-speaking events, go and check out dnxglobal.com. You'll find the link below this podcast as well. And if you have time, one last favor, please go to iTunes, look for Silvia Chrisman or look for the DNX podcast and leave a review. Thank you so much, lovely people, and I'll talk to you next time.